joyful hello to all of you. My name is Minnku, Buttar, founder of the Circle of Joy that brings you self-mastery programs and retreats. It gives me great joy to bring to you this season's talk show, a series of interviews on choosing joy, secrets, and stories from all over the world. It is my diligent attempt to show you that joy is not a hockey-pocky, frivolous concept, but a discipline, a way of life much needed. If you want to be resilient, radiant, and unstoppable like a runaway train. So subscribe to my channel so that you can tap into the wisdom of people from all over the world. I will see you there.
Hello to all you lovely souls in different parts of the world. Now, clutter in dictionary means a collection of things lying around in a very untidy mess. And so naturally, our minds go to physically cluttered homes and diaries. We think less stuff means less to clean and less to organize and less to store and less mess, right? But in this talk show, Choosing Joy, Secrets and Stories from Around the World, we always talk about what doesn't meet the eye. So no surprises that today's conversation is about freeing up time and headspace by rethinking loads of things you do in your life and about minimizing that chaos in your life. Namaste, my name is Minnku Buttar, your host from India, and I'm delighted to welcome you all back on the 20th episode of this talk show. If you want to catch the wisdom of my speakers on the 1st and 15th of each month, like, subscribe, and press that bell icon on the YouTube channel where we host these episodes. A little about my very, very special guest speaker today. It was actually her grace, her candor that caught my eye and then my heart. After our first interesting conversation with the most amazing combination of mountain bears and frangipani flowers and healing. She is the founder of Cherish Your World. She's a columnist, a featured contributor, writer in Biz Catalyst 360, and a columnist at the OWL magazine, Sacred Stories blogging. Her life's passion, my dear friends, and her vision is to passionately support people to thrive by guiding them to a holistic transformation of space, heart, and life. And how beautiful is that? And she has to her credit 4 books, which include Live Inspired. She has a short writing in poetry, Abundant Heart, Thoughts on Healing, Loving, and Feeling Free. And what shines through in all that she writes is her thoughtful, sometimes comical reflections on healing, loving, and living free as inspirational pathways for experiencing a soul-centered, fulfilled life. Please join me to welcome all the way from the United States, Laura Staley. Hi, welcome, Laura.
Oh, thank you so much, Minnku. I'm honored to be here. And what a beautiful introduction. I'm moved.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much for being here. And, you know, after a beautiful conversation last time, I couldn't wait to bring you out here and share your wisdom, your compassion, your heart with our global audience. So, Laura, actually, I was just thinking about this earlier before we came on. And before we go into the world of declutter, which is really the theme, I wanted to talk about what we should clutter our lives, if that's okay with you. Let's attend to this today a little differently. What caught my eye was that beautiful article in Biz Catalyst that you wrote, and you had quoted Pema Chödrön saying, "Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's actually a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness, right, can we be present with the darkness of others." That's profound. And Laura, you're an embodiment of compassion. And tell us, let's have this conversation first. in this ever-changing planet Earth, Laura, what role, according to you, does expanded self-awareness and empathy and compassion play in our healing from your point of view? All yours.
All of those. Oh my gosh, what a rich question. So, oh gosh, self-awareness, compassion, empathy, courage. I think they all play an immense role in our healing, because I know I'll just speak from my life learnings and perspective, and I continue to be a learner. I haven't figured it all out. I continue to learn and grow. But when we can face that darkness within, and I see it for me as all the parts of my younger self, and they're often emotional, and I even have names for them.
Oh.
So there's petulant Patty, and there's jealous Judy, and there's ashamed Ashley, and I just and I the angry Andrea, and
love that.
and these, but they're often these parts of myself that have felt unloved, been hurt by the words of other people or experiences I had in my past.
Right.
And being able to look at how I reacted or took on the shame of another person, right? Because often as a child, when difficult things happen, sometimes adults will say, well, it's your fault, right? And you're going, okay, I guess, I gotta, alter, shapeshift myself to be the very perfect human being. And none of us are perfect. We're all human. And so I think being able to cultivate that compassion for all the parts of myself and to pour love. Lately, I've just been pouring so much love, like from my inner self, from divine energy, universal energy, into those pieces and parts of myself, because it feels better. And then I know a huge practice in my life is to pause. I actually put the Viktor Frankl quote, and this helped me so much, because I absolutely would get triggered and and say, and it's awful, right? Because these words would come out of my own mouth, later on, as I was with my younger children and with intimate partners, my children's dad, who were no longer married, and I behaved so badly, and it was painful, and there was part of me that thought, oh, well, that's what anger looks like, and they just need to know what anger looks like. But anger is terrifying to a tiny child. And really, I even saw that cowards scare children. Like, why would I be terrifying my own children? So I needed to, get at that pause, right? Between stimulus and response, there's a space.
Beautiful.
And part of the self-awareness is, grounding in the body and entering that space. Literally, even now, I'll do this as a way. Or I'll place my tongue on the roof of my mouth, like I ground in my body, like I'll feel my feet.
Yeah.
And take a deep breath. How some people will say, count to 10, take a deep breath.
Yes.
All of those practices allow you to ground into the body and enter into that quiet space, so that one can interrupt that pattern, and begin to align with that deeper value. Because if I really value, because I value connection. I value our connection right now, right? And I want to be able to hear your heart as you are so deeply listening to my own, right? And when we can be present with another person and give them a chance to empty their heart from the pain, the suffering, it's such a beautiful gift. And I can do that now because I know my own. I know my own anger, reactivity, jealousy, envy, hubris, self-righteousness, all of those things, right? All those moments. But I choose, as best as I can, right? Because I think we're all doing the best we can to not feed any of that, but to feed my compassion, to feed my love for myself and another human being, because I know what it feels like to grieve, right? I know what it feels like in my body to grieve, and I think I know you've had loss, many people have had loss, right? And I think to know grief in your body, right? And then find that place of connection, of human compassion and connection, to go, stand beside me and tell me about yours, and I'll tell you about mine. And in that place of emptying our hearts, we can find love. So
oh, Laura, that is so beautiful that I will almost cry. and I think to be emotional as well is embracing your vulnerability, and that's, I think, what we as a humane touch are missing, where we have these facades around us and we think it's a moment of weakness, or people would take advantage, or people would judge us. But we've talked about that this beautiful space in that pauses where you can just claim yourself. And I love what you said, Laura, about just embracing and being next to each other and pouring our hearts out and emptying, the emptiness and the liberation. I love that. That definitely, Laura, beautifully put, would really nurture us and work our way to healing. Thank you for that, Laura. That was beautiful, and I relate to it so much. So Laura, let's move on. We've touched on what we need to add to our lives to make it more meaningful. Let's take this conversation back to what do we need to eliminate, or how do we declutter? Because we feel so cluttered. The monkey mind is forever jumping tree to tree. Decluttering means, to a lot of people, it means making life simple. Simplicity boils down to identifying the essential and eliminating the rest. So obviously, we're not talking about just the physical surroundings. We're talking about mental clutter here. So Laura, what also caught my eye about you was your book, Live Inspired, right? Was that the book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yep. And you've talked about brave and deep work of self-discovery. So this self-discovery, Laura, what I'm trying to get at, does this lead us to recognize the mental clutter? I mean, what do you think this clutter even looks like for us to even acknowledge it and recognize it? It's the first question.
That's a great question. Well, first I would say that the physical clutter often is, I know this is going to sound kind of funny, but it's talking to us in the sense that physical belongings come with stories and memories and associations. The person that you were with when you bought that artwork, or the photograph that was taken, right after the family fight, and everybody just kind of had the smiles on their face. But it contains that whole story, right? Of the argument that preceded, and then the happy faces afterwards, and it holds all of that energy. Right. So I will touch on that to say that. And then I think recognizing in terms of that mental clutter is that you are not your thoughts. The fact that you know that you have thoughts, that you can witness the thought, right? That you have these voices in your head, or like I was identifying, I have these little characters, right, that I've given names to, that they show up, jealous Judy. I mean,
you've given me homework. Okay.
Right. I mean, and nobody, has to name all these parts of themselves, but
beautiful.
But when you can step, again, it's a cultivating, that self-awareness to kind of drop down and kind of and just notice, wow, I have thoughts in my head. And even you described it as the monkey mind, and there are many of them, and they're often erratic, and they say different things, and it's often about our preferences and aversions and what we should have said and shouldn't have said, and why didn't I call Fred, and oh my gosh, and oh my gosh, I wore a pink, I wore the same dress that she did to the prom, and and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I've learned that all of that is a way, like, we've given our mind a task it can't do. It cannot, our mind and those thoughts cannot deliver to our lives all the things that we want and all the things that we don't want. Because guess what life brings? All of it. Sometimes your coffee tastes delicious, and sometimes you can't even get a cup of coffee, right? Sometimes there's a storm outside, there's a traffic jam, right? You're not going to be on time to an appointment. So you've got to be in communication, and again, have that compassion. Life happens. Life doesn't care about your preferences. It really doesn't. but it's like we've given our minds this task of, make it all right, and avoid those things that aren't right, and go in there and control and fix it. So I think for me, the permission is to drop down into the heart.
Yeah.
And really start listening to what has happened. What has actually happened that you haven't flowed through an experience from the past? This is what I've learned anyway. And your audience and listeners can kind of go in their own, asking themselves their own questions.
Yep.
But often we haven't flowed completely through our bodies, our hearts and souls, these experiences, like something, often uncomfortable or really awful happened, and we've locked it into our body. There's even a book called The Body Keeps Score, right? And it's about trauma and how the body literally will trap, because if a child, for instance, doesn't feel safe enough to kind of scream or yell or cry, right? Because it'll make it worse. And they just kind of go into freeze, and then they grow up and they've got all of that in frozen, a storage locker, right? They get to adulthood.
Yeah.
And another thing comes in that sort of looks like that discomfort.
Yes.
And bam, the mind is going, right? And the body's kind of like, and I think a lot of times we don't want to feel those sensations again, but they don't last. Here's the good news, is none of those sensations last. Honestly, I woke up this morning and I felt fear sensations in my body. I had some difficult dreams last night.
Right.
And I just kind of but I could feel the sensations in my body. And what I told myself, right, is this can flow through. And what actions can I take? Movement, dance, I'm doing that right now. Singing, there's so many practices. I even read a beautiful article on Biz Catalyst about a woman who guides people to play the harp and then release the energy of these past experiences and get to scream and not hurt anyone, right?
Wow.
They're not hurting themselves. They're just making a loud noise into the room, right? And maybe saying a bad word, but it's not directed at a tiny child or anybody. And the person is holding space for the release of those energies. And so when, and meditation, that would be my other suggestion.
My favorite.
Love, it has been transformational to still my body. Or in some cases, people are like, I can't sit still. go for a walk in nature, you know, a
I agree.
slow
Yes.
walk, or Tai Chi. Tai Chi is another, or
Yeah, the slow.
Qigong,
Yeah.
right? That slow
Beautiful.
movement can begin to, just because you're focused on your body,
Mm.
when you drop into the body, it helps quiet the mind. And when you
Yes.
take away the things in your physical space that cause all that confusion, or you organize them so that you can find your keys every day, or your cell phone, right? You know, then
Yeah.
this gets quiet, you know, this gets quieter.
Silence.
It doesn't totally go silent. I mean, the mind has to think. That's its job, right?
It's its job. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
survival.
Well,
It gets
yeah,
you places.
yeah.
Stay safe, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's its job to keep us alive, right? On the one hand, but I think lately most of us aren't being tracked by you know, a woolly mammoth or a T-Rex, right? So it's more of a psychological,
Yeah.
oh, what is she going to think of me, or what is he going to think of me? And so the fear or the survival is kind of like this psychological, am I going to belong? It's more of that fear of, do I belong? Am I loved? And yeah, and that's what gets all of this going. So dropping underneath it in the quiet is so helpful. I mean, obviously I get so excited about these topics.
No, but it's
rich,
it's also, Laura, it's also about not giving energy to what rises, not to fuel it further. And I always say this, you know, in my self-mastery programs, I go like, the mind or the ego, even it's your mind and the ego that takes over, is you could look at it as the GPRS in your car, that it guides you. You know, you punch in where you're going and it guides you where you're going. But imagine if your GPRS started speaking to you all the time, you know, rather than just guiding you when you need it. And that's where you have to be the master. And you have to, I always say this, I said, push, sit at the back, you know, you talk to your mind, seriously works, Laura, and say, Ush, can you please take a seat at the back and I'll call you when I need you. These communications that we do, and you know how beautifully I read somewhere that when you throw out the physical clutter, we clear the mind, but when we throw out the mental clutter, we clear our souls. You can relate to that, right?
Oh, completely. Yeah.
So
well,
where does one start, Laura? Where does one start in this decluttering journey? I mean, guide our listeners.
Oh gosh, right. Well, I mean, for some people they've got to start small because it could be overwhelming, right? So sometimes I say start with that drawer, or you could start where it stinks the most.
Whoa,
right?
that's brave.
Right?
You're talking
You know,
about
like
courage here.
so almost like where is it really loaded, right? Where, you know, like, wow, if you had at the junk room, you know, that could make a huge difference. So it depends on a person, but I think it's sometimes people don't realize it can be an unpleasant task. And I had a conversation with the ladies that we continue to support one another, and I'm guiding them through their decluttering their lives process. And we've all kind of acknowledged that sometimes clearing physical items is an unpleasant task, right? and it's almost like the secret that you won't tell anyone. And so to do your best to make it joyful and put the timer on, you know, just 10 minutes. And I think the same thing is for somebody who is just intrigued or curious about some kind of quiet. It doesn't have to be meditation. It could be taking a 10-minute walk in nature, right? To just hear the birds. Can you just breathe and hear the sounds? Just what can I hear? while I'm walking in the natural world.
Mm.
And then whatever thought, okay, what am I hearing right now? What can I feel the wind on my face, right? And drop into those sensations of the body. That can be a place to start in terms of quieting this, so that you can free your soul. Because the thing is, when you free it up and this gets quieter, then really creative ideas start to float up, or download. It's just so exciting. And when your space gets freed up, you can go have experiences that you really want to have, right? You're not online shopping. You're taking those resources to go see people that you love, right? Or go to a concert or hear music, or whatever it is, or joining people for an experience that you want to have. Because there's research now, Minnku, that people remember that the happiness from an experience of joy, right? Here we are, the joy circle, right? Lasts so much longer. I mean, most even children forget what they got for a holiday or for birthday, right? Absolutely. They won't remember, but they'll remember that their mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or aunts and uncles or whoever, somebody who loved them, took them on an adventure, right? And they'll remember that probably for their whole lives. So
the experience, I think, what's coming through for me, Laura, is that life is simple. So simple living and intentional living. I think intentional living, I think that's what's emerging for me, and that will get you where you want to. It'll get you in touch with your goals, with your principles, with your values. And I think end of the day, Laura, if it doesn't add to your life, it doesn't belong to your life, right? Another way of looking. And when things are not adding up, start subtracting. I think it's actually simple. I don't know why we bring in negativity, and we bring in guilt and fears, and it's just this unnecessary worry. So thank you, Laura, for absolutely saying that start small, those 10 minutes that you can dedicate, and then when it frees up this mental space, utilize it to beautiful transformations and experience living. Laura, thank you so much for all of that, for taking us to an authentic place that, if I can put it, it invites communication, it invites love. Thank you so much, Laura.
Oh, you're welcome. My joy. Obviously, I could talk for a really long time.
Yes, and
I love what the insights you reflected back too, because intentional living aligned with your values, your deepest values. If relationships you value, that's and you're welcome. My joy.
Laura, I would love to have you back, and I remember that we were also going to touch on toxicity, but we'll save that for another time, because that's a whole big topic. What's toxic, and why shouldn't you allow that toxicity to be part of your life? So Laura, now after that intense boost and a lot of homework for me, because I have emotions that I need to name. Maniac Minnku, and angry this, and I love your Judys and what have you.
Right, I know, right?
I love it. I'm happy to share it with all of fraternity on what I've named my emotions. But let's go into that more fun. I love how this joy and laughter session has been, but let's get into some quirky and spontaneous answers. So if you're ready, Laura, can I go with the first one?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what brings a smile on your lips?
Oh my gosh. Sing My Sweet Love, and when the black bears show up in my yard.
Yes, thank you for sharing that beautiful
my heart pounds, and I'm like a little girl.
If you now, you actually led me to the next question. If you could be an animal, what animal would that be and why?
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. There's so many.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
For,
Oh, like
putting
butterfly, bird, great blue heron, black bear. I mean, it's
Okay,
so
if you could
difficult
be
for me to
one
pick one.
animal.
Okay. I guess a great blue heron, because they're just elegant and self-reliant and beautiful and graceful when they fly, and they stand tall and regal, and yeah.
You do remember, Laura, that's how I opened your introduction, that here is my guest speaker who's graceful, she stands tall, and seriously, you absolutely caught the right animal or the bird. If you could, Laura, have a superpower, what would that be?
Oh, to have everyone that I encountered feel the deep love that I feel.
Oh, and I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it
That they would
every
be
single
free
time.
to experience that in their whole selves, and that peace, that love and that peace. If I, yeah, that's the superpower I would love to have. Just go sprinkle, and they just you know, they would be freed to love. Yeah.
And there would be no power struggles. And I think it's so important, and I would like to take this moment to extend to our listeners an appeal to include all the affected areas of the world in our prayers, just so that we could send them so much love and energy to heal all those people who are suffering, so that they feel healed. I think we need to send so much love to Mother Earth right now. Laura, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. One last question before we close. What is the one thing, and this is on a lighter note, what is the one thing you would like to change if you became God for one day? That's a biggie.
Wow.
Wow.
That all children on the planet would know that they were deeply loved, welcomed, cherished, valued, heard, seen, uplifted.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Laura, so much. That was the last one. How did that feel?
Oh. Pretty great. Thank you. Thank you for this amazing conversation.
I think, Laura, it's amazing because I include these rapid fire questions. Oh, I was going to put this in our fraternity on LinkedIn, but we're on a show and everyone's going to listen to this. So I'm just spontaneously going to include another question and say, if I did not call this rapid fire, what would you call this round?
Wow. You get to speak from your heart.
Oh, speaking from the heart. I love that. I think I'm going to call this Speaking from the Heart round. Thank you so much, Laura. And before we say bye to our wonderful, supportive audience, where can they find you to connect with you, Laura?
Oh, they can find me at cherishyourworld.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I would be honored to connect with your listeners. And just thank you so much, Minnku. This has been beautiful. Enjoy it.
Thank you. And I close this episode with a little challenge to all who you are listening. I suggest you write a little plan for your home and goals for your life, and it will tell you what does and what doesn't fit into your physical and mental spaces. Happiness, as we know, is a place between too little and too much. So join me, Laura, in saying bye to our global audience. Love you all and see you all on the 1st July with the 21st episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.